My name's John Giarrizzo, and welcome to YAM Teens. You'll notice that in all of my work, I'm referencing everyday life, and because I sit and draw people. And so today we're going to do a little demonstration of what that means. You know, how you find someone, either they're going about their daily life and you have to draw quickly, or you have an opportunity that someone's going to sit for you patiently and quietly and let you observe them over a period of time. So we're going to do a little demo today that illustrates that approach. So I've always enjoyed just sitting and drawing people. Everybody's different, and when I started drawing, I'm really just kind of searching around, trying to find my place on the page and how that figure in the pose that he or she is sitting works with the composition that usually just happens by default as I continue working. What I pay attention to is really how the light falls on the figure. So rather than drawing details as we think of drawing, rather than starting with parts of the anatomy, if eyes, nose, mouth, I'm really looking at the patterns of light and shadow that are falling on the figure. And I'm just searching for some relationship of those shapes as they begin to take form. That takes a while. It's always nice when the model is sitting still. Most of the time when I'm drawing, people are just going about their daily life, so they're not really in a pose. And then I have to work with, the best I can from that. Teaching life drawing was all about, which I taught for my career as a teacher, was all about learning to respond to the figure, which is a living being and moving and breathing, and you kind of want to try and find that life in the figure. So you have to work quickly and loosely. If you notice I'm starting light, you don't want to be too heavy-handed in the beginning. And then hopefully the longer I work, the more it starts to make sense. Always have sympathy for the model who feels like they have to sit still and then suddenly their back's aching, and it's really not that important. So when you get uncomfortable, Lisa, you just need to move, because it's really hard to sit still. None of us do it very well. So these are Conte pencils. This is a Cretacolor. I like working with Prismacolor or Cretacolor. And I work in red a lot. A lot of times I'm working on brown paper, but today I thought it'd be better to work on white paper because it'd be a little bit easier to see as I'm working. But I chose red just because it's really traditional. If you look at Renaissance drawings, a lot of the Renaissance drawings were done in red Conte. So when I went to Italy back in 1985 and I first studied up close a lot of Michelangelo's drawings and saw Caravaggio's paintings for the first time, I was really taken by the figurative tradition and that the kind of classical approach to drawing. I could never let go of that, and was always and remain in awe of the beauty of those drawings. So I think when I'm trying to create an image, it's often, with that in mind, thinking of those. It always takes me back to the work of Michelangelo and Caravaggio and Bernini and all the great masters that were everywhere you looked in Italy. So hard to find in Wyoming. I never know how a drawing's going to turn out first time, actually. It's always, every time I draw, I'm learning something about the model. So the more time I spend with the model, the more familiar the features of the model become, and drawings tend to be a little more successful over time. So you never know how it's going to go, but that shouldn't stop you, because I'm used to having drawings that don't work, but it's just an opportunity to learn what I need to do next time out to make it better. And gradually the shadows and the way the light is falling on the figure begins to make more sense. And much of the character of a person's face is hidden in the shadows. It's the subtleties. It's not what's really obvious. And so it's really important when I'm building a drawing to be patient with the development of it and let it kind of emerge on its own without forcing it, and not try and hurry it as well, but still respect the fact that the model is getting tired. So when you need a break, Lisa, take one. As you can see, I start kind of subtly around the eyes, the forehead, and then work my way into the figure from that point. That just happens to be my approach, not necessarily the only way to do it, but I tend to rely on that approach. So we've been drawing for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes now. And normally I imagine us sitting for a drawing like this lasting maybe 45 minutes to an hour. So I guess as we look at the progression of this drawing, it's about halfway through. Some interesting things have happened because we just took a break, and so Lisa's a really good model. She's sitting really still. But I like the way her hair just fell on her shoulder, and so I can add a little element like that. You know, it just adds a little story that wasn't there in the beginning. And now the more I draw, if I kept going, I would keep building the subtlety of the shadows. You could see that it's so much of a drawing is eliminating the light, so it's identifying the places where the light is really highlighted and focused, and then the rest of the time, especially on a white piece of paper like this, you're eliminating the light. So, you know, there's like a little highlight right there on her forehead, and you'd want to come back and soften around it to bring out those highlights. So the drawing is all about looking for the shadows, the shape of those shadows, and the relationship of the shadows to the light. And it's all, you know, as I find that, each person has their own kind of relationships of those shapes. And you're chiseling away, a lot like a sculptor, kind of taking away areas that need to be eliminated and leaving the parts that are highlighted, and then bringing in, developing the little hints of darkness. And most of the time when we start drawing, or people who are just beginning to draw are a little bit heavy-handed, and so then it gets real frustrating because you can't make changes. So a lot of the drawing is trying to build it up really lightly and slowly, and then finding those points of emphasis and adding the darks as I go. So if I were to take this drawing to completion, you know, over the next 20 minutes, half hour, it really would just be about enhancing the areas that I've already indicated, but then kind of separating them in terms of their value, their relative value of dark and light. And it's, you know, it's interesting because I think the key to a successful portrait is trying not to draw a portrait, but trying to see the figure as an abstraction of light and shape, and then trusting that process. And in the end, when it all comes together, a portrait emerges. But if I try and do a portrait of someone, it's you know, it's a recipe for failure, because especially if it's someone you know, because you tend to bring all of your memories and your feelings toward that person, and it gets in the way of seeing. And so the key to you know, a successful portrait, I think, is seeing the subtleties of light and shape in a person's face, in their gesture and their posture, and trying not to think about what most people will refer to as detail. You know, we get caught up in eyes, nose, and mouth, and really the story of the portrait is in all of the way the light falls across the softness of the skin, or across a wrinkle or a shape of shadow that falls on an upper lip. And that's where the portrait comes from, not in what we expect the portrait to be. And the eyes and the mouth, the nose will emerge out of those shapes of light if you're paying attention. Sometimes it works better than others. And for the first time drawing Lisa, this is, you know, an okay first attempt. That's not always the case. Sometimes they're really kind of drawings that I want to turn the page and not look at again. But this one, for a first attempt's not bad. Now, if I were to draw Lisa again, I would understand the way the light falls over her face and then I probably have a better sense of what to look for earlier on. But most of what I'm drawing, I'm discovering. I don't know what I'm doing. And it's the process of seeing that's teaching me where to go. It's just trying to stay patient and not be in a big hurry. So probably, before I go to, after dinner, I'll go to my room and sit with this drawing for a while and work. Sometimes that's a mistake too, because you lose the life that's right there in front of you. Sometimes I'm better off not doing that. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch, and I hope what you take away from the experience of seeing my work is that drawing is accessible to anyone who's sighted. As a teacher, I would tell my students I dismiss the notion of talent, and I really believe that anybody who wants to, who chooses to, has the ability to draw. It's just a matter of learning to draw by learning to see. Open our eyes and pay attention and observe our everyday life. That real art comes out of our individual lives and our own individual experiences. So that is the center of your universe. And it is the most valid expression of who we are by just paying attention to the life that goes on around us, opening our eyes and allowing ourselves the experience of observing without judging and making decisions based on what we see, not what we know. And the result is one day you might have an exhibit in a gallery like this, and it'll feel good, and it's a real honor to be part of it. So I just want to thank you all for paying attention and giving me the opportunity to speak to you and share my work with you. Thank you.